Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. And I hope you guys are enjoying Mercury retrograde as much as I am. And we've got 2 more weeks of it. Woohoo! But we've got a great show for you tonight. My guest is Laura Young. Laura is a marriage and family therapist. She's a hypnotherapist and a self-help author of several books. And tonight we're going to be talking about us women and how sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. So, Laura, tell everybody about you and how you got to the place where this is what you do today.
Oh, it was a messy journey. Let's put it that way. It certainly wasn't linear and it wasn't direct. But, oh my, I started on a little bitty island off the coast of Newfoundland. And it was so isolated. The church was the main focus of attention. So, I got a lot of patriarchal influences from that church that took me many years to get over. Lost my parents at an early age and spent many years in an orphanage. So more of the church influence of don't be with the nuns in an orphanage many years. And then I married. Looking back on it, it's funny, but I married an Air Force officer. Okay, It seems like inside of me, I was still needing the familiar of the patriarchal rules because I hadn't learned yet how to break some rules, how to rebel, and how to start finding myself. So after about 13 years of marriage and 2 wonderful daughters, I divorced because I wanted to go to university and study to be a psychotherapist. And he said, okay, it's fine. I support you as long as nothing changes at home. Well, 3 meals a day, iron my shirts. The orphan Annie in me had to rebel because that was too much. But I knew I had to do something for me to find some freedom, to find that wild child that was in there. When I lived on the island, I lived there until 8 when my father died. And during that time, I was really like out in nature a lot. The stormy Atlantic Ocean would be hitting the rocks, and I'd be there standing on the rocks, allowing the spray to cover my face, and thought I was, just free. And all of that got forgotten over the years of hissing furnaces and plastic walls and no outdoors. But I tell you, and I tell all women, well, all people, but primarily women, if you have anything in there that's free in an exciting, interesting place where you felt one with nature or you felt free, you can resurrect it. No matter what you go through, you can resurrect it. So I did go to university at night, and single mom, raised two daughters, and then to do what I needed to do, I had to go, get a master's. And then I went to mental health for a while and started practicing. And then I knew I wanted to go into private practice because it meant more freedom to actually explore and then to be able to be. In the meantime, I was in therapy for years, trying to get through all that stuff of religion, nuns, military officer, patriarchal influence. Whatever helps us will help the men. They have been conditioned to. I'm not here to just bash them, please. But really, we have to stand up and be counted if they're ever going to change. Because if you look at the state of the world, what they have done so far, ignoring 50% of the power in the world, it hasn't worked so well.
No.
But someone emailed me just yesterday or the day before saying there's a surge in divine feminine power, astrologically speaking. So I think we're right on the cusp of something really good. We're going to tilt it. We're going to to be, the significant number that tilts it into being recognized as a power in the world. And women have a hard time with that. Women are still, even in the 21st century, many women are confused about what that means because they confuse it with the male template, which is so different than our strengths. And women get into the male template for reasons and they try harder to fit into that. And it makes it very discouraging for them. But what I'm here to say, and I know that's your work too, Jean, is we have to value what we have to offer.
Yes.
And we can have some of the male attributes when we do, and they have some of ours. But mostly we are creative, intuitive, willing. We're willing to be beginners. Men have trouble with being beginners when they have mastered become expert in one area. They have trouble being beginners about the inner life and things of that nature. But we are willing. We have so many. If we would join in sisterhood and not feel that other women are competition, the patriarchal influence, which has come down through the ages. I'm sure I've gotten way off on the tangent, Jane.
No. But the thing is, you're onto something here, because one of the things that I have observed in my 1 or 2 years in the corporate world is that women are our own worst enemies more often than not. I found that it was much easier for me to work for a man as my manager than it ever was for me to work for a woman, because there was backstabbing, there was undercutting, there was, lack, not enough. If she gets this, she can't have that, and that kind of stuff. And the women perpetuated that, not the men. They were very content with where they were on their little pedestals. And it's okay, honey, you'll do good, but not the women. They were vicious.
Yeah. A woman, you think branding is passe, but it's not. A woman who went to a major clinic, to work as I think she was social worker, or anyway, psychotherapist. And the psychiatrist in charge of that clinic had a interest in her that was beyond professional. And kept pressing and kept pressing and kept pressing. Now, she acquiesced, as he was very powerful, and she felt her job was in danger. And what was interesting to me is the women in that was mostly women. And of course, this wasn't his first rodeo, so knew what she was getting into. And no one kind of prepared her or helped her. But they did walk, literally, stand around the water cooler or the refrigerator in the kitchen and talk about her as if she were a loose woman without morals. They didn't stand up. If they had stood together and told her and supported her, they could have in group gone to him and said, lay off, something. And she could have kept her job. But by the time it was over, she was so demoralized, not just by his conduct, but by her. There was no sisterhood.
Right.
And that was so sad. I mean, I mentioned this situation, but I come across it in various versions.
And today of all days is the classic example where perhaps we've turned a corner with this conviction of Harvey Weinstein.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a lot of that there where the women they didn't take the sides of their sisters always. Some of them did, but not all of them did.
Right,
There's a lot of judgment that was cast and aspersions cast. But at least today, he's gotten some of what his due is. Yeah. Not the whole ball of wax, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yes, absolutely. I saw an ad recently, and I just wanted to throw up. It was like a match, and some young people were around talking. It's a nice way, an easy way to make friends and to meet. And it seemed like egalitarian.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, this young woman stepped in front of the camera and in a wistful voice said, "I'm ready for a good man. Come and find me." I thought, in 2019, are they up in uprising to get this ad off the air? I mean, there was no power for the women when this ad finished that way. Come and find me, like, are you looking for a car? And I just got so hot, and I just got to kind of say, today, our young women, do we have? I mean, where do we start if that's acceptable today?
So that's my question to you. What can we do to begin to shift out of this and help women find their own power and begin to become sisters to other women?
Yeah, what I have been attempting to do is to teach women some of the unseen, how the first 6 or 7 years of life, when we were in that merging, slower energy, and we take in everything that's around us as if it were the truth. And our conditioning is passed down, grandmother, aunt, mother, and they themselves don't feel empowered. So they pass down a subliminal message that you're the weaker sex. The message is all in there. Be nice. Don't make waves. Don't get dirty. Don't climb trees. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't be your natural self is the message. So what I ask women to do is to first stop and reflect their lives to see where they're stuck. What are the messages? What are the behaviors that are repetitive? That's a pretty good clue of where to start. I mean, I know when I was in the orphanage, and I could go back to feeling the confidence of standing on the ocean shore on the rocks and letting the spray and feeling free. I could go back to some moments to know there was a time that I had some feeling of being one with the world and good about it. A lot of the children, because they may not have had such an experience, became very apathetic. So sometimes women, girls, I have college age clients who come in and they're almost obsessive compulsive about what's the right thing to wear because mom, and they're afraid to leave home without their makeup because mom said and aunt said and grandmother said. So I have to say, where are you having trouble? So I use journaling for me. I help them use it in a way that gets them into some of that early energy. It's almost like self-hypnosis. Mm-hmm. Journaling is less threatening for a lot of people.
Sure.
Because they just feel better about journaling. And there's lots of ways to use journaling. But if you get into a slow, reflective, slow energy, and if you go back to your childhood, and if you can find some of the patterns that you were subject to. I had a young woman do this recently, go back, and she came up with, at around 6 or 7, she was visiting with her mother to a crotchety old neighbor's house, and she wasn't nice enough to a neighbor who was crotchety, And the little girl was afraid of her, really. Mother slapped her across the face for not being nice enough to this neighbor. It was invested in being nice to this neighbor rather than her daughter's feelings of being intimidated by her. So you see how it was passed down the line. So in her case, she has trouble in her life being too nice and being taken advantage of, and naturally, you kind of put yourself out there as a victim if you're not able to say a crisp no, not for me, or then it usually frees you up to say a nice, enthusiastic yes. But a lot of times people go through life and say, well, yeah, maybe I can do that. Yeah, I'll try. And there's no crisp no's or enthusiastic yeses. It's like a flattening of enthusiasm for life in order to fit into a certain pattern of how they're supposed to be. And so when she went back and journaled at a deep level, and she really was intent on getting over this niceness, and in my book, I talk about it, and I talk about kindness being a choice and a confident choice versus, all that niceness. When someone comes to see me and they're so nice, I know my work is really cut out for me. I diverge here. She found this little girl, and what I encourage people to do, and I teach them on my site and in my book, to actually dialogue with the little girl, to give the little part of her, that young part of her, new permissions to stand up and be counted, new permissions to get determined, to get over what was passed down that wasn't hers. It never fit, wasn't hers. Every generation has a chance to do it differently and more freely. So she worked with that little girl and started moving out of being so nice and the negative effects it had in her life and her relationships and at work in terms of promotions and things of that nature. Just, one little piece. But whatever it is, you can go and find it, find that.
Oh, journaling's amazing. I mean, and that is what prompted me to write my first book. It was a compilation out of my journaling when I started to go back to my childhood and do what you say, put the pieces together and find the patterns. But it's not just women, Laura. I was working with a client just before this show, and what came up in the session for this man was that the same sort of transference took place when he was 4, and he lost who he really was. Mm-hmm. Enough people told him what he should be, that he completely lost who he really was. And you have to go back and find that today.
Men are certainly victims too. Mm-hmm. I just, happen to be more focused on women because more of my practice is women. But when a man comes in and he's ready to say, I really want to have better relationships, I really want to look at, that's not too often in my practice, but there are especially younger men who are wanting to have more intimacy and leave the corporate energy at the corporation, and different energy, because they have been victims too.
Sure.
It's just that when Mother said to Amy, don't get dirty, don't do this, stop yelling, her 2 brothers were climbing trees and having crazy fun.
Yes.
They get conditioned in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And not in such a way that weakens them as at their core, like some of the conditioning girls get very early. It weakens them to think you can't take care of yourself in this big old world. There'll be a rescuer. You go to right schools, you go to the right church, or you go to the right university, you find the right man to take care of you. Well, how well has that worked for most of us.
It hasn't.
Yeah.
It hasn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You said a word a minute ago that caught my ear because it was about the soft no. Have you noticed that when people are afraid to say no or yes, that they will say, you would say, for example, you invite somebody to come to a luncheon or a dinner or whatever, and they don't want to say no. They don't want to go, but they don't want to say no. They'll say, I'll try to make it.
Yeah.
That try word is the equivalent of no every time.
It is. But means, you know what but means? It means I'm not going to do what you're asking.
Yeah. Everything before but.
Yeah.
It's history. Yeah. So this is one thing I think that people who are listening to our show tonight or in the future should actually begin to examine is catch themselves when they say try or but. And think about what are you really meaning here? And honey, speak your truth.
Words have power.
They do.
Power. Like a lot of too many women, more women than men, I think in this case, go around saying, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how
I do that. I still do that. And I know better.
It tightens every visceral part of you. Yes. And makes you feel a little smaller in the moment.
Yes.
You could say, sometimes we have to say it if we do something outrageous, but usually it's I regret or excuse me or apologize or I'm sorry. I'm sorry. See, I work on it too. I didn't mean to inconvenience you, but I had a woman call to change her appointment, and on the phone message, in 2 minutes, she said, I'm sorry 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And when she came in, I played it back to her. I said, you've got to hear yourself. You've got to. She said, I knew I said it a lot, but I had no idea how fast and furious it comes forward. And I wasn't even aware of it. And she said, a responsible job and I have employees. Do you think, I don't even know if I say it often at work or not, do you think it might undermine my credibility if I say it pretty often?
You think?
Yeah. Probably so.
It's innocuous. It happens. Where I catch myself doing it is in the grocery store where the aisles are not quite big enough and you push the cart out and there's somebody trying to come around the corner, but you couldn't see them. And I'll say, I'm sorry. And then I go, oh my gosh, what have I just done? I've just done it again. But by that time the words are out of my mouth.
Like, excuse me would be perfect.
Yeah.
But that little petite self of you, in some ways, in that moment, it's almost like you were a naughty little girl. You interfered with someone's space, and you were not taking up your own space. Like, you ever notice how guys take up space?
Oh yeah.
And we keep pretzeling into smaller versions sometimes.
Oh yeah. If you've ever had to sit next to a man on an airplane, he flops himself down in his seat, and then he's got both of the armrests and half of your space, and then the tendency is to, because I don't want to touch him, so that one,
Well, we do an awful lot of things to ourselves, and so I encourage people, especially women, you don't have to rebel in a big Neiman Marcus way. There's reasons like why the women rebelled with anger in the 60s. There was certainly reasons for it.
Sure.
And now we need to continue the progress they made, not with anger, but with determination that we count and we're going to take up space and we're going to join in sisterhood. There's no, that's a patriarchal kind of belief, like keeping the women, like there's a scarcity of men, of money, of love, of beauty. And so we better watch ourselves and not get too close to one who's taller, thinner, hotter, wealthier. That scarcity thing is still in there and keeps women are doing better with it. They are every day, they're doing better with it. But there's still that belief of not enoughness.
Yeah.
Not enough of what makes them successful. Money, love, power, beauty.
Right. And that's why they tend to undercut each other.
Yeah.
In any arena, not just the work arena, but it can be, at a party.
Yeah, dating.
Dating.
Yeah.
And I've done it. Guilty as charged.
Oh,
I have done it in the past.
I've worked years on letting it go. Mm-hmm. We're all a work in progress.
Yeah.
We're not finished. I mean, I'm old enough now that it doesn't matter.
Right, me too.
Now I was thinking, if I sat in a plane and the man plopped down, see, I wouldn't care now what they thought. I could be a crotchety old woman.
Yeah.
Excuse me? I would do that now. But like you said, I mean, for years I flew without that permission.
Yeah, I know. It's exactly that. Well, Laura, before we run out of time, please tell the viewers tonight how they can find your book, get in touch with you, and perhaps work with you.
Well, I do phone sessions as well as in-office sessions. Mm-hmm. And my book is on Amazon. And if the main point of contact with me would be LauraBYoung.com. I have a store, and I have several ebooks and audios and information about other books. And
and people, get on her newsletter. She puts out the most amazing blogs.
Well, thank you for that.
Yes.
It's my latest book is Remove Obstacles. I have to read it because it's all of a sudden I forgot a word. Remove Obstacles to Experience Unstoppable Feminine Power. And that's on Amazon. But
hold it up, please.
My
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
There's my book, and the brown stripe is not on the Amazon books. Anyway, and then an email for me would be Laura at Life, L-I-F-E, resourcecenter.net. Laura at liferesourcecenter.net. And that is the name of my practice, Life Resource Center. So I'm always open to people with ideas, anything you want me to address in the newsletter, in articles. I'm just here, and I love being of service.
Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing in the world today, because you're helping us one heart by one heart. And so, viewers, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. I appreciate you all. And remember, people who take responsibility for their lives create the reality they desire. I love you all. Ciao.